Hello and welcome to another episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. We are here live on Wednesday afternoon, as always at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel and live on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. Make sure you hop into the chat and say hi if you are here watching live. If you're watching this sometime in the future, you can still drop a comment. Please leave a like if you're watching on YouTube and go subscribe to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel. Not only do we host this show live every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but I also have some different Chalk Talk episodes, usually every other week or so, diving a little bit more into the film room. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, please make sure you are subscribed again to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show YouTube channel. We got plenty of things to talk about today here on Wednesday, February 12th, coming off of a busy night of college hoops last night. It was a really, really high level Tuesday night slate, I thought. We have a lot to look forward to this weekend, certainly headlined by the number one matchup, or the number two matchup between Auburn and Alabama. But there was a lot to watch across the college basketball landscape last night as well. And we're going to get into quite a bit of that. Let's start with the shakeup in the Big Ten standings. We went into the night with Purdue, Michigan, and Michigan State all tied atop the league standings with 2 losses. I believe Purdue was 1 game ahead in the win column. So you had Michigan coming in at 10-2. Michigan State was also at 10-2. Purdue was 11-2. By the time we went to bed last night, Michigan was in sole possession of first place at 11-2 in the league because they were able to hold on and take care of business against Purdue. I probably shouldn't even use the words hold on. Purdue led for the overwhelming vast majority of that game. Michigan found a way down the stretch to get the victory. And then in a pretty darn big upset, Indiana went into East Lansing and beat Michigan State. That was one that certainly got tight down the stretch. The Spartans tried to find a way to pull it out, but Indiana came away with a 71-67 victory. It was interesting in that one. Coach Tom Izzo was going to break longtime Indiana coach Bob Knight, break his all-time wins record in the Big Ten. Obviously, that will happen sometime in the next couple of weeks, certainly for Coach Izzo, but maybe I like to think that Coach Knight's smiling down, saying you weren't going to get that against my Hoosiers. So just a neat little backstory there, and certainly a much-needed win for Coach Woodson and the Hoosiers. I talked a little bit more about the upcoming Indiana coaching search on Monday's episode of the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show podcast. So you can go find that on YouTube or Spotify. We won't get into that so much today, but Michigan State has a grueling schedule coming up. The Spartans are obviously coming off of the loss to Indiana. They have to go to Illinois on Saturday. Then they host Purdue. And then the following week, they're at Michigan and at Maryland. So those are 4 games where, even as good as Michigan State is, like, they could easily drop any and all 4 of those games to start to tumble down the standings a little bit. Purdue has a stretch where they're hosting Wisconsin, at Michigan State, at Indiana, home for UCLA. Those are tough games for the Boilermakers as well. So it's really looking like, at least here in the near term schedule, that Michigan, aside from that big game that they're going to have next Friday against Michigan State, if they can win that game, they can protect the home court there in Ann Arbor. This is going to be Coach Dusty May's conference to lose in year 1, which is incredibly impressive. And whether that shapes how he may or may not look at the Indiana job going forward, again, that's probably a different story for a different day. But as we sit here right now, again on February 12th, it kind of looks like that Michigan might have the inside track to winning the Big Ten. And again, they obviously have they're in first place by themselves right now in the league. One of the other games I wanted to talk about certainly was Kansas State taking care of business against Arizona. Coach Jerome Tang and his team have now won 6 straight. This is a team that in late January, they were 7-11 overall, 1-6 in Big 12 play. They've now found themselves to 13-11, 7-6, and it's an uphill battle probably to get at-large consideration for the NCAA tournament, but they have enough resume builders still that even at 13-11 here, I don't think it's insane that they can start to really build an NCAA tournament resume, because I'm not sure if there's a group of 6 consecutive wins, certainly not a group of 4 consecutive wins, more impressive than what the Wildcats have kind of rattled off right here. The 6-game winning streak was West Virginia, Oklahoma State, at Iowa State, at Arizona State, and then Kansas and Arizona. That's an incredible grouping of wins. And I know people are always so slow to give any credit to any other team, and we'll probably get into that a little bit when we talk Kentucky, Tennessee here in just a moment. But these Big 12 teams are really darn good. They've gone on the road and won a couple games in that stretch, and then you beat Kansas and Arizona back-to-back at home. That's an incredible stretch for Kansas State that, looked that they were just down and out. This was going to be a lost season. They spent a bunch of money on NIL. Things weren't going well for Coach Tang, and now, boy, have they righted the ship in a major way. Their next 2 games are at BYU and at Utah. Even if they just split those, I think that they're setting themselves up to have as John Rothstein would say, they're putting themselves in a position to be in position to sneak into a interesting spot come Selection Sunday. I guess we also need to talk about the Creighton-UConn game. Creighton had come in winners of 9 straight, but lost at home on Dollar Beer Night at Creighton. They lose to Coach Dan Hurley's squad 70-66. Coach Dan Hurley, in very Coach Dan Hurley fashion, had some things to say to the fans on his way out the door. I think he called somebody baldy, in certainly an ironic term for him to use there. He was reminding everybody of his 2 national championship rings and kind of waving bye to the folks there in Omaha, Nebraska. But a really impressive performance, I thought, for UConn on the road. Liam McNeely, we've been witness to some special freshman performances throughout this season with, certainly what Cooper Flagg has done as arguably the best player in the country at Duke this season. The guys at Rutgers, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, those guys have had some big-time games. Derek Queen at Maryland has had some big-time games. Todd Pettiford at Auburn has had some big-time games. When you consider the environment, when you consider what this game meant to both teams, I'm not sure if there was a better freshman performance this season than what we saw from Liam McNeely last night at Creighton. The Connecticut freshman went off for 38 points. He was 12 of 22 from the field, 5 of 10 from deep, 9 of 10 from the free throw line. Again, 38 points and 10 rebounds for McNeely last night. He scored 38 of their 70 points in a win at Creighton. Incredibly, incredibly impressive performance from the UConn freshman. Let's take a look at the Big East standings now. St. John's is still up there at 12-1, now 2 games ahead of everybody in the league. They are at Villanova tonight, but probably a potential trap game. Was a couple of emotional wins recently for the Red Storm. Creighton took a step back last night. They are 12-3. Marquette 10-4. UConn 9-4. So still going to be tough for people to catch St. John's at this point, especially with Creighton, probably the team that had the best inside track to do so, losing last night. We'll see how St. John's fares again tonight at Villanova, and one of the top scorers in the country for the Wildcats in Eric Dixon. That'll be one of the top games to watch on the Wednesday night slate. But I want to update the folks on Twitter here real quick that we are about to talk some Kentucky versus Tennessee, and we will get right into that. But last night at Rupp Arena, without Jackson Robinson, obviously still without Kirk Kriisa, we watched the Kentucky Wildcats finish off at the regular season sweep of the Tennessee Volunteers with what it ended up being, 75-64 win. Now, there's obviously a lot to talk about coming out of this game. I think that, unfortunately, injuries are once again a storyline for the Wildcats. With 8 minutes and 40 seconds to go in the game, Lamont Butler kind of got rolled up on with his same bad left shoulder. I was hopeful in the moment that it was actually more elbow than shoulder. It seems like it's essentially been confirmed that no, he just re-aggravated his bad shoulder. Whether it's been a torn labrum all along or whether it is now, who in the world knows? That's not necessarily information that we even need to know. Well, I think we're going to just continue to be living availability report to availability report throughout the rest of the season. But post game, Coach Pope didn't sound overly confident that he would be back in the short term. I think that it was sort of, do you look at it glass half full or glass half empty? By the way, cheers to the Cincinnati Reds. We had pitchers and catchers report on Monday, so we're almost baseball season again. But good news, bad news, depending on how you look at it with the injuries. Coach Pope seemed to indicate that he believed that the Cats could be healthy with Butler and Jackson Robinson in March, which is a good sign, or certainly good news that this isn't a maybe a season-ending issue for either one of them. However, today is February 12th, so talking about March, is still a ways down the road. So I think that again, we're just going to have to live day by day at this point, but that's the unfortunate cloud over last night's win, but that certainly shouldn't take anything away from the excitement that deserves to come out of a season sweep of the Tennessee Volunteers, the number 5 team in the country. Again, without Jackson Robinson, without Kirk Kriisa, playing the final 8 minutes and 20 seconds without Lamont Butler. And at that point, the game was tied. It was 54-54 with 8 minutes and 20 seconds left after they hit a couple of free throws. No Lamont Butler. So it's an 8 minute and 20-second game without your second and third leading scorers, without your backup point guard as well. And Kentucky won that stretch, 21-10. So that's a pretty darn impressive performance down the stretch in winning time for a very, very short-handed Kentucky team. And you had just some really special moments of guys stepping up and hitting big-time shots for the Wildcats, whether it was a couple of the threes from Ansley Olminar, who finished 2 of 3 from 3, tied Otega-Oweh for team-leading honors with 13 points. Trent Noah, the Mountain Mamba, stepping up and making 3 threes off of the bench, had 11 points for the Wildcats. Travis Perry stepping up off the bench, hitting a couple of big threes for the Wildcats, 8 points for the freshman. When you step back and look at this and what Kentucky did leading to this victory last night, Ansley Olminar started the season as the 9th man in a 9-man rotation. I tweeted this out at B Ramsey KSR late last night that there was a stretch in December to mid-January. Ansley Olminar scored 5 points in about a 3-week stretch. He had games where he played 6 minutes, 8 minutes, a couple other sub 10-minute games early on in the season. This was the 9th man in a 9-man rotation. Then Travis Perry and Trent Noah, they were the 11th and 12th men in a 9-man rotation. These guys, because Kentucky was blowing people out early in the season, they were getting to play in a lot of games, but it was always, mop-up minutes. And then Lamont Butler and Kirk Kriisa had some injury issues, so Travis Perry gets thrown into the fold. But to this day, Trent Noah's only played in half the games, and half of those were quote-unquote garbage time minutes. So he, is still brand new to playing meaningful Kentucky basketball minutes. And we saw these guys again, 9th man, 11th man, 12th man. They stepped up and they played over 50 minutes combined last night and scored 32 points combined to beat the number 5 team in the country. And I said it. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a team in the country that has had their 9th man, 11th man, and 12th man score 32 points in a basketball game. I don't care if that's a low major team and in late minute time. I don't care if that's when you're winning by a million, losing by a million, injuries, whatever it may be. I doubt that there's been a 9th, 11th, and 12th man score 32 points in the game this season. And Kentucky just had it happen last night in a win against number 5 Tennessee. That is not only is it shocking, it's otherworldly impressive that this Kentucky team continues to battle through the adversity of injuries. And, generally, I'm somebody that pretty much just says, like, I don't care about your injuries. I'm not interested in hearing about them because it's part of college basketball. Everybody faces them. Now, does it seem like Kentucky's facing them more so than some others this season? Yeah, but guess what? It's just part of it. You still have to go try to, find a way to win the basketball game. And Kentucky has been pretty darn good at doing that. We'll get to a couple comments here on the YouTube channel. BBN says, although Pope said Perry's in a natural point guard, what can a guy like him do to improve his ball handling when he's forced into that role? Love the kid, but he's shaky as a primary ball handler. I think that, it's a good question because you're right. I remember watching Travis Perry back in his AAU days because he played with Indiana Elite, a team that I followed pretty closely. That he's not necessarily a true point guard. He's a true shooter, but he's not most comfortable. He's very he can handle the ball, and he's done pretty darn well at it, being thrust into handling the ball in arguably the best conference we've seen in 20 plus years in college basketball, and some of the best defenses in the game right now. But I just think that it's all a part of the game slowing down a little bit, and you've seen that game to game. He talked about it, I believe, after the Louisville game, where things slowed down for him a little bit, and you can certainly continue to see that. But yeah, it's a size issue, it's a length issue, it's an athleticism issue. It's probably never going to be super comfortable for him handling the ball in the SEC. And I said this again at B Ramsey KSR on Twitter last night during the game. I think it was early in the second half when he was in there, turned it over once or twice. I know he turned it over once. He just looked uncomfortable a couple other trips down the floor. I think you have to be really cognizant of having his minutes come when Amari Williams is also in the game. I'm probably the biggest Brandon Garrison fan of the over 200 people watching this right now live, but there's a difference in ball handling ability still between Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison. And I think that if you could have Amari Williams in there to pressure release a little bit against the five while Travis Perry's in there, because honestly, you can just throw the ball to Amari Williams at this point and he can bring it up. Is it my favorite thing in the world? Not necessarily. I made a video earlier in the season about how I didn't want him dribbling in the backcourt. Unfortunately, those days are they're gone due to injury, but fortunately they're somewhat gone because he's gotten a lot better and more comfortable handling it because the opposing five man isn't going to pick you up 94 feet from the basket. So he can just kind of dribble it down and initiate some offense if Perry's not comfortable with it. But I think it comes with having to play more and more. Travis Shoemaker says, not mop up minutes, trust minutes. Take them seriously and you're ready for the moment. That sounds like former college basketball coach Travis Shoemaker talking right there. But you are right. Like that's especially true. For your walk-ons, let's face it, at Kentucky, they're mop-up minutes. That's what they are. But these guys aren't walk-ons. These are four-star recruits that, sure, was the plan for them to play for you much this season? No. But the plan was always for Travis Perry and Trent Noah to probably play someday. So you are right, Trav. Like when they were getting in for 6 minutes against Wright State and for 4 minutes against Brown and 4 minutes against Western Kentucky, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's not fair to call those mop-up minutes or garbage minutes for Trent Perry and Travis Noah, or for Travis Perry and Trent Noah, because you are expecting them to be ready someday. So they're building their own confidence, they're building trust in the coaching staff, so that then when these opportunities arise and they're thrust into situations, it's not deer in the headlights. They're ready to go out and try to beat Tennessee, which they did, obviously, on Tuesday night. I do think going forward, if you are without Lamont Butler and Jackson Robinson, which, we've already had to play enough games without Butler and Kirk Kriisa, and you kind of were able to skate by with Travis Perry playing some point guard minutes, kind of your emergency point guard in Jackson Robinson, doing a pretty good job, relying even more and more so on Amari Williams. But now you remove Jackson Robinson from that fold, and now you're pretty much down to Travis Perry and your five-man Amari Williams. Recently, Kobe Bray has looked much more comfortable as a ball handler. I think you have to be careful with that to some extent because he just doesn't have the pace and the change of speed, the change of and kind of the straight line quickness, I think, to really break some full court pressure, but he is incredible off of ball screens. And I think that once you get the ball into the half court, however you get it there, I do think that going forward with this limited roster, some of the limited playmaking Kentucky's going to have, just keeping it more simple, getting some high ball screens early in possessions, especially for Kobe Bryant to sort of pressure release some of that, I think is something you're going to have to see from this Kentucky team a little bit. Otega Oweh's going to have to handle the ball. That's not my favorite thing in the world either, but these guys are just going to continue to be thrust into new and different roles, and you're going to have to make the most of it as you can. I do want to dive into the film room just a little bit here. So let me get this set up. We're going to do some producing on the fly here. And make sure we're all set. All right. Yep. I think you guys can see that. So we're just going to fly through a little bit of the film here. I picked it up here late in the second half. I just want to showcase a few things. One, some of Kobe Bryant's shot making and how I do think that can be a big part of Kentucky's offense going forward without Butler and Jackson Robinson. But then certainly some of the defensive intensity and some of the added aggression that I felt like Kentucky played with on Tuesday night. Obviously, Tennessee does a pretty good job of trying to take you out of running offense. They're up in your body. They're pressuring the ball. They make it hard for you to just sort of, continually change sides of the floor and reverse it side to side. But something Kobe Bryant does a good job of is forcing switches, creating separation at the point of the screen, whether he's getting into the body of his man. You can see how he works Zakai Ziegler, a much smaller defender. He walks him down a little bit, gets some hand-to-hand combat here, and then now you have a 6'6", 215-pound guard cutting against a 5'9", 160-pound guard, and he creates some separation there, forces the switch. Now, something I want to talk about here is this is Jemiah Mashack, one of the best defenders, not just in the SEC, but in the country, certainly on the perimeter. There's a lot of shots that Kobe Bryant turns down, and I would just love to show him this in the film room and be like, hey, like you just dotted up one of the best defenders in the SEC and took this step back three. If you're not afraid to take that one, can we go ahead and let it fly a few more times, game to game, whether it's when you're running off of a screen or whatever it may be? Like Kobe Bryant cannot be afraid to take these shots going forward. I mean, that's just a massive shot. Again, look at the time and score. Getting ready to go into the final media timeout. Kentucky's down 2. Kobe Bryant dots up one of the best defenders in the country and knocks down a 3. We'll get a look at a defensive possession here now. Switch on some of that initial action. Yeah, let's see. Is this where we get the stop or is this Zakai Ziegler's layup? Oh, yeah, they turn it over. So on the possession prior, they had gotten the switch, and Ziegler beat Amari Williams, got downhill, and laid it up. But this time, he just gives him a little bit more space because Kentucky's not that worried if Ziegler wants to shoot this. He was 0 of 2 last night from 3, was 1 of 11 down in Knoxville the first time around. Just stay in between him and the basket. Happens to throw this one away. Now we'll get back to some action here. Amari's done a really good job recently of getting these catches lower. I mean, there's a lot of times I feel like he might travel, but he does a good job here of getting the catch here, but ending up down here. And again, I don't want to watch this too closely. That's probably a travel, but it's a great cut there by Kobe Bryant. Like, this is the stuff that frustrates me. I mean, this is like my 5th time watching this, but look at Chaz Lanier on Andrew Carr down here. Look at right now, boom, there's 2 hands on him. I'm not saying blow it right away. He's hugging him right here now. Like, they're trying to throw it to him. It's not like they're not looking at him. Trying to throw it inside Andrew Carr, still hugging him while drawing him back towards the baseline. Now, there's a couple times where Kentucky does this too, so I promise you this is not blue shaded glasses, but just the physicality that is involved in these college basketball games now is out of control. The whistle has to blow right there. Look, I mean, then he just completely displaces him. He's still holding him, still right there. Look, Chaz Lanier's behind Andrew Carr. There's two hands wrapped around his waist. Okay. I spent all that time complaining about it. Then he actually did blow the whistle. I did not remember that being a part of that clip. Well, there we go. But still, the whistle should have blown like 5 times before that happened. Anyway, I'm happy again now. Just a tough play by Marvin Williams. There's a lot of times earlier in the season he would have traveled. He definitely would have missed this. I mean, it seemed like forever he just wouldn't convert a 1-and-1 opportunity or an and one opportunity, I mean. And he was able here to fight through what Jermaine Mashack's tried to help with 2 hands and 2 feet, just couldn't get in there. Actually doesn't convert the and one here, I don't believe, but that was a big shot. We need the 2 more than we need the 1. So that was a big effort there by Amari Williams. And again, remember, this was 60-58 Tennessee about 90 seconds ago. Kentucky's without their second and third leading scorer, and they're finding ways to put the ball in the basket here down the stretch. At this moment, we had fast forwarded through the media timeout, but I had tweeted out at that point how Kentucky, in the first half, Kentucky defensive rebounded 87.5% of Tennessee's misses. Tennessee is a top 10 offensive rebounding team. They normally get 38% of their own misses. Kentucky held that to 12.5% in the first half. In the second half, things were not pretty. Kentucky defensive rebounded 40% of Tennessee's misses. That's right, 40% from the second half to the final media timeout. I tweeted that out, and I said, this is going to be the ball game. Either Kentucky's going to start defensive rebounding and they're going to win, or Tennessee's going to continue to offensive rebound and they're going to win. And lo and behold, Kentucky was 100% on the defensive glass in these final handful of possessions. Just a great job of toughness down the stretch here. Love this right off the bat from Kentucky. Switch it. He's on the flare. He maybe could have just settled and shot that. This is Milicic, who's made a couple. But I like that Otega Oweh is getting up and like that move right there. That's what you want, because like look at how Milicic moves towards the sidelines. That puts him on his heels there and almost made him pick it up, but it made him kind of reverse dribble out. Now we're moving away from the basket, almost halfway through the shot clock. It's good aggression there from Otega Oweh. Now you're staying between Ziegler and the basket. Another good aggressive closeout. So we're not that worried about Milicic putting it on the ground. You just want to take him away from 3 there. Andrew Carr knows he can help. That's another reason you can be more aggressive on that closeout, because this is Ziegler. You're not that worried about it. You know you can help off of him and get in there. You recover. Gets beat a little bit, but again, you know that you can help off these guys, because that's not Lanier. Like, Gainey's not a bad shooter, but you can still help and recover off of him. Kobe Bray, a pretty good stunt there with using his length. Gets Ziegler to kick it out. Good aggressive closeout. Gets the guy to miss, and then a good old team rebound. It's funny. I was with my buddy Dalton Vachon on Saturday watching the Kentucky-South Carolina game. Pretty sure at halftime, team led Kentucky in rebounding with like 5 or 6 rebounds. And in that game, it was actually hurting Kentucky, because it's sort of like a live ball versus a dead ball turnover. Neither one are great, but you'd always rather have a dead ball turnover. Well, any defensive rebound is great. You would much rather have it than the alternative, but a live ball defensive rebound is much better than a dead ball defensive rebound, because you can get out and play in transition. In this situation, though, I don't care about any of that. I'll take the team rebound, and we'll go play on the other end. Let's see what Kentucky gets into this time. Really playing through Kobe Brea here in these final minutes. Andrew Carr had a tough game. Played 19 minutes, 2 points, 0 of 3 from the field, 2 rebounds, 2 turnovers. Not a very impressive stat line, but this is a big play right here. I mean, this is a winning play. is handling the ball, hits Trent Noah with a nice little bounce pass as he curls around it. Trent Noah drives it in there, gets fouled, makes both free throws. Those are the type of plays you need. I mean, that's the difference between winning and losing some of these games. I mean, being able to find 2 points there, especially after 20 or so seconds of using some clock, that's massive, and it starts to put a lot of pressure on the other end for Tennessee, where scoring certainly does not come easily for them. Kentucky only needs a couple more stops in this game at this point. Obviously, Trent Noah gets beat there, then Amari gets dunked on his head. Um, Certainly would rather not have been that quick, but you still live to fight another day because you got the free throws to begin with. Once again, I like where Mario Williams is getting this ball instead of running, just kind of being okay, especially against the pressure. Instead of just being okay with playing so much offense out here, he's really working on running offense in here so that when those guys come off, they're on the line to shoot as opposed to coming off out here where you're either entirely outside of the scoring area or obviously your percentages go down as you move out further from the arc. So he does a pretty good job of getting his feet inside the line there for us to start coming off of some of the zoom stuff. Back cut by Trent Noah. Carr flares in. Now we have a favorable matchup here. Milicic on Kobe Bray. I think we get one more switch coming. So again, this is one where I'd love to go back. Like, Kobe, man, there's some that you turned down, but in the biggest moments, you were kind of living on just getting a favorable switch and taking these guys to work. This is a 6'11", 7-foot center and Felix Okpara, who can also move his feet. It's a tough step back three in a massive moment. The other thing I want to mention here, I'll play it back again. Watch Kentucky's bench. Like, look at Jackson Robinson over here and his reaction. Look at Ansley Olmenar and his reaction. Lamont Butler, Brandon Garrison, who has reasons to, like, these are guys that could be pouting if they wanted to pout. They're all losing their minds. That's what's special about watching a team come together, and certainly this Kentucky team is experiencing some of that right now. We'll try to finish up this game here, and then we'll get on out. At least get a couple more stops here. Milicic had hit a few, but this, like, he's more of a catch and shoot guy. Like, asking a 6'10" forward, even a guy that can shoot it a little bit like him. And there's some people on Twitter that get caught up. I mean, Milicic is like shooting 30% this year. He's gone off against Kentucky in both games for whatever reason. But last year at Charlotte, this is a guy that shot 38% or something on like 60 makes. Let's not forget, there was a period of time, probably only like 6 weeks or so ago, where Jackson Robinson was shooting under 30% from three. What would you have said if somebody said, well, you don't need to guard Jackson Robinson. He's not a good shooter. Like, well, we all knew he was a good shooter. And guess what? Now he's shooting 38%. There's a lot of large numbers. You can't always just look at what somebody's done this year, especially a guy that's not like super, super high volume like Milicic Jr. He's a really good shooter. But these ones like behind the handoff aren't the ones that he's going to make, especially when it's what I just talked about on the other end. Look at where this handoff happens compared to where Mario Williams was. So now Milicic is coming off 26, 28 feet from the basket instead of being able to come off right on the line. That makes such a difference in percentages, especially for somebody like him. It's still contested. Tennessee only shot 5 uncontested threes on Saturday, or on Tuesday night, excuse me. They were 1 of 5 on uncontested threes, 2 of 10 on contested threes. Kentucky did a great job of contesting the Volunteers throughout the game. That made me a nervous wreck when it happened live, but glad they got their hands on it. And then you can pretty much call ball game at this point. Again, and he sort of rejects it here, but there's some parts to Kobe Bray's game that are pretty darn good off of the dribble in ball screen situations. And he can get downhill here. Obviously attracts a ton of attention. Lobs up to Otega Owe, who makes a great cut. Once again, the Kentucky bench is just losing their mind. And then now, like, you need one stop and one rebound here pretty much, and the game is over, and you get timeout Tennessee. Again, this is a game that was 54-54 when Lamont Butler went out of the game. It was 60-58 Tennessee with 4-something minutes, and Kentucky finishes the game like this, goes on to win 75-64. Just such an incredible performance by this Kentucky team, a shorthanded Kentucky team to win this one. I'm glad we were able to get into the film room a little bit this week. If you want to see more of that, just let me know, and I might drop a Chalk Talk over the weekend. I do know that we will have a KSR floppy action show, which I do along with Zach Gagan of KSR. I'll be on the KSR YouTube channel sometime in the coming days. But thank you all for tuning in here. We're getting really close to about 300 live viewers, and I appreciate all of you. If you're watching live on YouTube, please hit the like button and make sure you are subscribed to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show. If you're watching on Twitter, certainly leave it a like there, drop a comment, give it a retweet, and please make sure you're following me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. Well, I appreciate you all joining me here today for this week's episode of All Fired Up with Brandon Ramsey. We'll be back next Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, BBN, for being here, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.